The pursuit of scientific truth is often imagined as a steady climb toward clarity, where each discovery neatly resolves a question and reveals a deeper layer of understanding. In reality, it is frequently the opposite, a process marked by uncertainty, partial answers, contradictions, and persistent frustration. The experience associated with Richard Feynman's reflections on science, particularly his emphasis on doubt, self-questioning, and the avoidance of self-deception, illustrates how the search for truth can be mentally and emotionally taxing rather than satisfying. At the core of scientific inquiry is the requirement to remain open to the possibility that one's current understanding is incomplete or incorrect. This creates an ongoing tension. Every answer is provisional, subject to revision or rejection when new evidence emerges. Instead of closure, each solution tends to generate additional questions. This cycle can make the process feel unending, as if progress is always accompanied by the realization of how much remains unknown. For someone engaged in this kind of thinking, certainty becomes elusive, and confidence must always be tempered with doubt. Feynman's well-known emphasis on avoiding self-deception highlights another source of frustration. To rigorously question one's own assumptions requires constant vigilance. It demands that a person challenge not only external claims, but also their own interpretations and intuitions. This internal scrutiny can be uncomfortable, because it undermines the natural tendency to seek reassurance in conclusions. Rather than providing stability, scientific thinking often destabilizes one's sense of understanding, forcing repeated reevaluation of beliefs that may have already seemed settled. Another dimension of frustration arises from the limitations of tools and methods. Scientific knowledge depends on observation, measurement, and models that approximate reality. However, these models are inherently incomplete. There are always phenomena that resist explanation, data that does not fit neatly into existing frameworks, and theories that work well within certain boundaries but fail elsewhere. Encountering these limitations can lead to disappointment, as the expectation of a complete and coherent explanation remains unmet. The gap between what is observed and what can be fully explained is a persistent source of tension. Whether this frustration is worth enduring depends on how one values the process versus the outcome. If the goal is a definitive, final answer to complex questions, the scientific path may feel unsatisfying. It rarely delivers finality in the traditional sense. Instead, it offers incremental progress, where understanding improves gradually but never reaches a point of absolute closure. For individuals seeking certainty or resolution, this ongoing incompleteness can be discouraging. On the other hand, if one accepts that truth is inherently complex and that partial understanding is the best achievable outcome, the frustration becomes part of the method rather than a flaw in it. In this view, the lack of closure is not a failure, but a reflection of reality's depth. Still, this perspective does not eliminate the emotional burden. The repeated cycle of questioning, revising, and encountering limitations can remain tiring and, at times, discouraging. In the end, the search for truth in science is not a straightforward journey toward answers, but a continuous engagement with uncertainty. Feynman's perspective underscores the discipline required to persist in such a process, but it also implicitly reveals its challenges: persistent doubt, incomplete explanations, and the absence of final answers. Whether this is worthwhile is less a question with a universal answer and more a matter of personal tolerance for ambiguity and one's willingness to remain in a state where clarity is always approached but never fully attained.